Hi everyone. So I know this is kind of a crazy site, but this is essentially my palette library for the end of 2024. And so today, as kind of a special edition of my Pan Those palettes, kind of finale for the year, but also just to document like my palette collection and to show you guys what I have and what I'm thinking about for the new year. And also, if you have any comments or interests in what you want to see me be working on next year, I can definitely take that into consideration, even though, like, I know I tend to be impulsive and just kind of work on whatever I feel like working on. So, yeah, this is my palette collection right now. Let me count off the number of palettes I see here. Whoa, calm down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 palettes. I don't think I ever imagined, like, I literally just pulled all of them out to see what it was like, and I was like, this is a lot more than I thought I had. So, yeah, let's talk through them. Some of them are actually empty, so I think I really have 14 palettes that I are contenders for next year, and I definitely want to see some progress on. But yeah, and I'll do some reflections maybe at the end of the video. We'll see. So let's move this library off to the side, and let me show you my recent empty palettes and kind of what happened to them. I think that they have a good story to tell. So the first one here is very exciting. I have this honeysuckle palette, although you can't even read that anymore. This is a honeysuckle palette that I got as a friend last holiday, actually. But as you can see, there's parts of this kind of overlay that started flaking off. And although the package is quite sturdy, I decided that this was not quite for me, and I decided to franken the whole thing. You might have already seen me talk about this in previous videos, and that I also did a shorts on how I frankened everything, but now the palette is nice and empty. So so everything that was left, I did my best to franken. I did lose some shadow just in the process, but honestly, I tried to just move things out of here rather than, like, you know, destroy anything and throw it away. That was not my intention. So this palette is leaving the collection. Pretty bittersweet, but I never actually intended on having, like, pre-made palettes. Essentially, I know that these are the custom, or these are what people are accustomed to, but I'm actually really like my custom or my freedom palette systems, and I did that actually before I really started on my channel here, or at least started reposting videos. I'd really gotten into freedom palettes. So let me show you the Franken shadows that I created, and also gives you a glimpse into my freedom palettes as well. So let's move that off to the side. So these are my 4 Freedom palettes. They're still a little bit messy because I think there's still some of those shadows weren't pressed like super solidly in there. But here are my 4 Freedom palettes here. As you can see, they're varying sizes. They're all from the MAC Freedom system, which is kind of part of their Pro line. They have palettes that are even bigger. Actually, I think it's just about this size, but these are 2 separate palettes. So you have the square one where you can do these inserts. You can do 2 of them if you would like. I don't know if you can see it that clearly in this lighting, but I have one side here that has the insert, and they actually rock out, so you can like push on the bottom and they lift out, which is super handy, especially that way you can access the bottom. Be careful here. You can access the bottom to kind of push out the shadows, so that's really handy there. And then I've these 3 shadows fit in quite nicely. Actually, these are all face powders. So yeah, so this one is probably my biggest one. This one is a 6 pan, of course, and this one also has, these are mostly neutrals, and some of these did come from the honeysuckle palette. I think 1, 2, 3, 4 of these were presses out of there, and this might be an ABH one. This is, I think, a MAC shadow. I think both of these are also, 2 of these I think are three of these I think are Franken shadows from the honeysuckle palette. As you can see here, that's kind of what they look like, and I definitely was experimenting a lot, so there was still some kind of fallout here and weren't as firmly pressed as I wish they would be, but I think that's the process of, I like to, maybe I'll dub myself as the Franken Panner now, because that's pretty much what it is. But let me see how many shades in here are more or less Franken shades. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, no, 8, 9, 10, 11. So 11 out of the different pans that you see here are all frankened from my collection previously. So so I feel like this is a really, really good system for me, and I actually plan on moving into the system into the next year. This one is actually going to be my pan that palette for next year. And we'll kind of, at least I'll start out with it. It's not like I never stick with anything. And plus that means that as I feel like moving through shadows and switching them out, I can easily switch them in here. So that's kind of the plan there. Okay, so that is my Freedom system. And then, where do I go from here? Okay, let's do the other empty palette that I have, and it's a tiny one, but it's actually this Stila one that used to have some lip things in here. And I think in my last update, I said that I would try to hit pan in it, and I did hit pan, and then I decided I wanted to transition the lipsticks out of here, and I ended up putting them into my lip palette. I didn't keep all of the red lipstick that was in here because that's not quite my shade. I think that's Ruby Woo from MAC, but I did take out whatever was the more neutral shades, and as you can see, there's a little bit of the red in there, and I just kind of put it on top and melted it together, and that's what it came out with. So it was really, really pretty, and I kept a little bit of that red, so maybe I can work through that, especially in the new year, and kind of work through that. And I think I might have put, I can't remember what I did here. I feel like I melted something into the top one here too, but oh, you know what? I put a little bit of this one into this one because this was the Refi lip balm, and I felt that it was a little bit too dry for a balm that it was. It was like a dry balm. It was such a weird sensation. So this one was like a pure balm from Revi Beauty, which is by Allie Glines. So I kind of mixed that in there and melted that together. So that's kind of what happened in this palette. Still not reaching quite for this yet. I'm kind of working through just other lipsticks that I have in my collection. But it's nice to see that this one is empty. This one I'm starting to fill back up again, and I have a few ideas to kind of how to fill this up as well. I kind of use this as both a lip and a cheek palette, but you'll see this again next year for sure. All right, I guess since we're on the top, you've seen a few MAC palettes at this point, so let's go ahead and do my last MAC palette in my collection, and that is the concealer palette. I think I started updating you guys a few months ago, and this is what it looks like now. I'm not sure if I even showed you guys that I had mixed this together. I think in my last video I showed these were still darker, and I was using it as kind of a contour color, and then I realized, oh, actually I need to use those to mix with the lightest colors, and actually mixing them with the lightest colors gave me these colors. So, I mean, not surprisingly, right? If you know, like mixing shades light and dark, like they lighten them. Not surprisingly, but it's just kind of funny that if I mix this whole palette all together, it just comes out to these shades on top. So I think altogether this one has 6 grams in here. So it'd be essentially like 3 grams of NC35 and 3 grams of NC25, which is essentially what this is. And I don't know. I didn't compare it to the actual pot concealer because I think that's the same formula that comes from MAC. That one might actually have 7 grams. So that one might actually be the best deal. But of course, me being the type of panner I am and makeup user I am, I like mixing things. So so this was really, really fun to work out of. And of course, I have plenty of product for the next year as well. So this one will stick around. You'll see this again for sure in the new year. All right, so now I think the rest of them, no, I have one focus palette for this month, and that is this, whatever I have left in my Haus Labs, not Hourglass, Haus Labs palette here. As you can see, a lot of the shades have been emptied this year, and have hit pan on all of them. This is actually a Franken shade that was a shade of these two, and I think I had pressed MAC All That Glitters, MAC Expensive Pink, MAC Motif, and MAC Honey Lust, and I actually just pressed them all into this pan. So that's actually been really nice to work out of. It's a very, very pretty shade. Probably one of the nicer shimmers I've had in my collection as of late, even though it looks super boring on my hand, I'm sure, and I don't have the lighting to properly show how pretty it is, but I've been really enjoying using that. This is just a kind of matte taupe, I don't know, it's a little darker than my skin tone. So I'm trying to figure out how to work that into my collection and work that into my routine and try to use that up as well. But I hope to really focus on these two for the end of the year and hopefully hit pan. I don't think I'll finish, but at least get most of this out. And then these two shades, I'm just kind of working on it as I want to. and they're more dull, I think, than I remember them to be. They don't really add anything to the look, so I think I'll probably end up mixing these and put them into a Freedom shadow, and then same things with these. I'll just kind of put that into my Freedom palette as well, and then call this palette complete as well, and that way I don't have to keep reaching for it. I might keep this kind of in my archive because I think there's a lot of memories, and this is very sentimental to me, even though I've only had it for a little over a year, but I think it holds a lot of different memories of my journey this past year with makeup. So, so yeah, really, really excited to move this along, and I'll try to give an update on that next month, but that's probably might be actually the last time you'll see of it. Okay, so the next ones, let's do, I have 2 face palettes and a few eyeshadow palettes. So let's do the eyeshadow palettes first then. It looks like I have 5 remaining eyeshadow palettes to talk about that are kind of in, you know, actually stand alone. And these have varying meanings to me, which is really, really cool. Okay, let me try to move them into frame a little bit better and move these ones off to the side. So let's see here. 3 of these are from my friend still Steph. I recently met up with her and got to, she was very kind enough to declutter these to me, and now I have these in my collection. I most recently worked on this one in a project pan. This is the Monet palette from Milfy. I think that's how you pronounce it. I was totally taking it out the wrong way. It's absolutely beautiful. I was in shock when she first introduced them, and showed everybody that the ones that she had in her collection, and I looked them up immediately, and I feel so grateful that she decluttered them and was decluttering one of them, and I managed to snag it. So this is what it looks like on the inside. There's 2 shimmer shades here, and the rest are quite neutral. This is a really, really interesting palette. I got to use it about a dozen or so times now, a little bit more than that. The glitters in here aren't as impactful as you think they would be. I'm not gonna really swatch them much today, but they're also like moving glitters, so they kind of go like all over the face once you put them on. And the rest of these are like either a little too sheer for me, a little too dark for me, so it's been an interesting experience with this palette. It also is goes to note that this is a Japanese palette, and like I feel like this might be very telling of the Japanese aesthetic, and at least approach towards makeup is that it is quite just neutral and very natural, and that's kind of what I experienced out of this. The pigment load isn't very strong on this. The payoff isn't huge, but it is very pretty. And so this one might be more of a companion palette, I think, and I need to kind of figure that out. But I think just the experience of taking it out of this little sleeve and just the feel of the palette, like it's all very much an experience, and I enjoy it very much, and we'll figure out down the line how exactly I'll use these shadows. This next one is from the brand Viseart, and I've always wanted a Viseart palette, especially I was, you know, thinking of the Petite Pros for sure, but she had this palette that she was decluttering, Steph was, and yeah, I think it's, as you can see, it's kind of a Freedom palette system as well. I think that's why I'm so interested in them, is that they're kind of a Freedom palette system as well, and although I think these are different with that the actual palette is magnetized. I'm not sure about the pan itself, because the MAC Freedom system is where the pan is magnetized and the bottom is not. So either way, if I end up putting these in there, I'll kind of figure out a way to do so. But this palette really intrigued me because of the purples up here, especially this purple blush. I don't really have anything else like this, and so I really want to try using that down the line as well. But I haven't honestly really played with this palette much yet. It looks like there's a kind of a peachy or neutral row and this purple row, pink row. So I'm excited to kind of give it a try and try out the Viseart formula for myself. But I think just even having these pans and having the freedom to maybe press something else in here is really intriguing to me. And of course, it's very petite, like the name suggests. This looks like it's the Fleurette Amour line. I don't know if there's another shade attributed to this, but yeah, I think that the packaging intrigues me a lot too, with a lot of magnetic components here, as well as just how slim and compact that is. And I always appreciate that when companies do that. This last one from Steph is from ColourPop. This is actually my only ColourPop makeup I own right now. I've owned maybe a few other items, just a handful, but yeah, this is called a Twist of Slate, and looks like I already have got some other eyeshadows on here, not surprising. And it's very much like a cool tone palette, which is very unusual in my collection. As you saw, that a lot of mine are actually quite warm, so it's actually really nice to have a kind of a more cool tone palette in my collection. I'm not sure about using it on its own, but again, maybe one of those companion palette type ideas. Maybe we'll be the Monet with this palette together. I think that might be an interesting experiment, if you will. I'm not sure what this stuff is on the side, but I will probably try to wipe that off a little bit later. But none of my makeup is pristine. I try to keep it clean if I can, but there's always stuff that gets into it between all the frankening that I do. So I'm not surprised. I feel like some of these shades will be used in future frankens as well, just with how cool tone they are. And oftentimes I'm trying to franken like a warmer tone eyeshadow. And I think it just makes a lot of sense to pull them out. This is a cream eyeshadow. I've actually haven't swatched that before. That's also interesting. It's like a cool tone base there. Okay, cool. So as you can see, a lot to play with in this palette here. These two are also palettes that I haven't used much of. As you can see here, this is a really, really cool Smashbox palette. I think this is from their Cover Shot line. This is the like all shimmers palette. And they weren't kidding when it said it's soft light. Like, these shades are so soft. I thought that they would have a little bit more shimmer to them, but they really don't. They're just kind of very, very sheer shades. So not quite what I was expecting, but I think this packaging was what I was kind of going after this time. And I know that somehow I'll use these shades, right? Even though they might not have the effect that I'm quite looking for, but somehow use these shades, whether it's in a Franken, whether it's a companion palette, like I'll make them work somehow. And so I was willing to pick up this palette, especially with such a cool cover. A little bit boring, but it is what it is. And actually both of these I got from Glambot, which is the makeup resale site. So they like didn't cost me that much. I think definitely less than 10 bucks for like each one. This is the Makeup Forever. This is like a decade old palette, but I only just joined my collection last year, so I'm like trying to wipe off some swatches on my fingers. But yes, this is about a decade old, but it's only been in my collection for about a year because I bought it off of Glambot. And this is the Makeup Forever Artist Shadows. I always call it Artist Shadows number 2, and it's the more colorful one, which was so unexpected of me. Their number 1 volume was definitely more neutrals, but I was like, I can't pass up the more colorful one because I just don't have shades like this. And these shadows still perform really well. As you can see, they're still really vibrant. There's a lot of product in here. It's quite a heavy palette as well, probably one of the heavier palettes I have. And yeah, there's about almost 2 grams of product in each one of these shades. So, you know, back then, a decade ago, they were not skimping with an amount of product in here. So I really keep this as my more just playtime eyeshadow palette, and not so much one that I fold into my everyday, like I need to hit pan. I have goals for this type of palette. So this one's going to stick around probably for something fun. Although these top shades, these shimmer ones, this gold one, like the more neutral ones, I'm definitely happy to pull them out at some point, to franken them at some point, just kind of try to use up the ones that I don't reach for. But these colorful ones are really fun. Although these matte ones definitely don't perform super well, but these shimmer ones, these 3 are quite fun. So, yeah, I might do a few looks with this, but I wouldn't expect to pull this out anytime soon. And the packaging is super fun as well. All right, so I think we only have our face palettes left. And right now I have these 2. So I think you've seen both of these in my Pan Those palettes over the course of this year. Right now I have a, this is a Sephora, I don't remember what they call it. I think it's just like a mineral micro smooth Captivate powder. And so these are all baked, of course. And this, these kind of colors worked really well for me in the summer, so I'm not quite pulling for them right now in the winter, but I am keeping it around because I think it matched me so well in the summer. I also did push in this Franken bronzer type thing, or is this an eyeshadow? Man, it is looking shimmery. I already cracked a bit too, but that's because I did dry press technique, so I actually haven't really swatched that one too much, but here it is. Okay, it's definitely like pretty sheer. It could work as a bronzer, I think. So that's something for me to think about. But yeah, I don't have a ton of spaces for like face palette stuff, or like face larger pans. So this is kind of what ends up happening to them as they get popped into the top here. I did find that if I can kind of like match them up over these shadows, then or these, you know, face powders, then they don't do much damage at all, which is really cool. So that's one face palette, and then this is the other one that I was working on. As you can see here, there's not as much pan as you saw last time. I did have pan in this one, I had pan in this one, but I did press some shadows into here. I think this was like a mix of a few things. It's not as highlighty as it was before. I'm just kind of swatching in my arm here. Not as much of a highlight as it was before, but it is, actually might even be a light bronzer. Maybe that's what I was going for. I really don't know. And then this is a blush, actually, which is quite pretty. So I'll probably pull those into a project sometime and start getting use on that. But yeah, these are quite pretty, and I think I'll enjoy using them next year. Swatch is quite nice as well. So yeah, so that is, I think, pretty much the gist of my palette collection. So it looks like 2 face palettes. In terms of eyeshadows, I'm going to remove my empty ones over here. I'm not really sure where to count this one. Maybe it's a split between face powders here and eyeshadows. So let's stack those up. Actually, a lot of eyeshadows. Stack all of them up. Getting closer and closer to the camera here. Oh, and there's this one down here. So maybe that one's gonna sneak down here right now and do, you know, palette Jenga, which you can see from the side. It's quite impressive. A face palette here. This one, I guess, is technically an eye palette. Does it go there? Maybe. But this one's going to be gone, I think, by the beginning of next year, so I might not count that one, actually. But yeah, it looks like 1 lip palette, 1 concealer palette, which I think seems reasonable for me. And then lots of eye stuff. I'm just going to count from the bottom here. 1, 2, 3, 4... Sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I mean, I guess these are just duos. 9, 9.5, 10, depending on how you count this one. And then for face, it looks like I have 3 here. So, yeah, I don't know exactly how I feel about having such a large collection. This is more eyeshadows than I could ever use in my lifetime, especially just knowing me. I just kind of use 1 shimmer shadow and 1 crease color, and that's about it for me. And I always wonder, like, if I could just have face palettes that do the same thing. I feel like it could. But I feel like this is also a very manageable amount of products for me, and like enough where, kind of like I mentioned, like it's a library, right? Like I see it as a library, like it's things that I can pull from, I can experiment with, I can dabble in, and I don't necessarily need to put it on myself to finish, but I need to be using them. Similar to books, you know, like you should be reading them, even though my library of books don't really get touched much, but that's for me to work on another time. But I think for the sake of where I'm at with my panning journey, I think that this seems about right. I feel like I could do with less eyeshadow palettes. I think if I really had to choose a number or something, I would maybe say like 4 palettes. If I broke it down by pans, maybe about, yeah, 4 palettes, 6, 4, yeah, like 24, 25 eyeshadows, I think. I have a lot of pans here, although that's actually an interesting question, is how many pans do I have? I was 1, 2, 3, 4, 10, plus 6, 8, so 18. There were 6 in here, so 24, plus another 6, 30. Ooh, 30, plus 10, 40, 46, 46 plus 9 is 55. And I'm going to count this as like maybe 2, in terms of like full pans, maybe. Yeah, so like 57, 60 eyeshadows, which is a lot. 60 eyeshadows, now that I'm thinking about it, like 60 eyeshadows is a lot. And I honestly don't have numbers in terms of how many I was able to use up this past year, but I don't think I can use up more than like 4 full eyeshadows in a year, right? Like even with all my frankening skills, like I really can't get through that many. So that's kind of a wake-up call as well, as like 60 eyeshadows. If I'm using like 4 a year, that's still like a long ways to go. A long ways to go. 4, 10, 15 years of eyeshadow right here, and some of them like are even too colorful for me to use, so I don't really think that's really fair to keep them in here, but I think just for the sake of this exercise, it's interesting to think about. So so definitely I will be working through these and seeing how I can maybe double duty them or work them into other things. Sometimes I actually like putting eyeshadows, especially the more shimmery ones or the very like almost skin tone ones, into my powder, my face powder, and using them up that way. So that might be an approach I can use, especially I'm thinking even just for this palette where I feel like a lot of the shades are really sheer and look almost the same. And then the other things I can maybe start using into bronzers and things like that. But it'll be slow going, and also a reminder that I don't need more palettes. And face palettes, kind of same thing. I mean, how many colors do I really need of any one face item? And I also have like individual blushes aside from this. Not that many, thankfully, but I still have an additional like blush and bronzer like in single form. So that's definitely something for me to like think about and add into here. And yeah, I think this is just like, it's a reminder that I need to keep working through things. I feel like my lip and concealer collection are, at least my lip palette collection and my concealer collection seem quite under control, so I'm okay with that, although I do have a number of lip items to go through, because most lip items are individual and not in palette form. So anyways, let me wrap up. I know it's been a long video. I hope this was kind of an exciting, quote, finale to my Pan Those Palettes kind of video series for the year. They've actually become quite popular on my channel, so thank you so much for watching them and engaging with me on them. If you have anything you want to be seeing in these videos in particular, feel free to let me know. I'd be happy to consider them. But I'm just excited to be working on things. I think what you'll probably see next time around is an update, of course, on my Haus Labs one, besides everything I'm not working on. I'm not working on these either. I think it'll really just be these 4 that you'll see next time. This one I'll probably be introducing more. I'm mainly only using this blush right now, but I'm hoping that I will work this one out of my collection. Oh, you can kind of see me in the back here. Hi. It's always awkward when I realize like, oh, I'm actually in the reflection here. And then I'll probably start working on this, and I'll keep working on this and showing. I'm hoping to hit side pan over here pretty soon, but that's probably the only progress you'll see. And hopefully you'll see an empty palette on this one. I'm hoping to hit pan on this, so I might throw a picture on Instagram if I do get to that goal. But yeah, otherwise I hope to have this palette be empty by the beginning of next year and into my Freedom palette system. And then these are the palettes that we are going to say bye to, and I will be putting them in the recycling. Although this one I like to keep around. I'll probably be mixing some sort of powder in here. So, all right, let me get out. Let me push this over here so I don't get in the reflection too easily. But thank you so much for watching, and I'm looking forward to updating you in the new year. Have an awesome one. Bye.